ChemQuest 52, Acidic Properties of Salts, questions 1 through 8. An acid is a substance that donates a proton in a reaction. A base is a substance that accepts a proton in a reaction. Critical thinking question 1. If the chloride ion Cl- or the cyanide ion Cn- were dissolved in water, would you expect the ions to act as acids or bases? Explain. Ask yourself, could it accept a proton? Does it have a proton to give away? We would expect the ions to act as a base because it doesn't have a proton to donate, and since the ions are negatively charged, it would be more likely to want to accept a proton to balance the charge. Critical thinking question 2. If the ammonium ion, NH4+, were dissolved in water, would you expect it to act as an acid or base? Explain. We would expect the NH4+ to act like an acid. It appears to have an extra proton that could be donated. Critical thinking question 3. Although not all ions act as acids or bases, we can generalize from the above two questions that if an ion acts as an acid or base, the following rules will be observed. When in water, positive ions may act like acids. When in water, negative ions may act like bases. Determining whether an ion affects the pH. Consider the chloride ion. If it affects the pH, it will react in water in the following way. Cl- plus H2O goes to HCl plus OH-. Consider the cyanide ion. If it affects the pH, it will react with water in the following way. Cn- plus H2O goes to HCN plus OH-. These equations confirm the answers from the questions above. Negative ions, if they affect the pH, will act like bases because they produce OH- ions. The base ionization constants, Kb, for equations 1 and 2 are shown below. Critical thinking question 4. The expression for Kb1 assumes that HCl exists in the solution without breaking into ions completely. Similarly, the expression for Kb2 assumes that HCN exists in solution without breaking into ions completely. However, one of these, HCl or HCN, completely breaks up into ions when dissolved. Which substance breaks up completely into ions? Explain. HCl breaks up completely in water. We know this because HCl is a strong acid. Critical thinking question 5. One of the ions, Cl- or Cn- does not affect the pH because it will not react as depicted in equation 1 or 2. Given your answer to question 4, which ion do you think will not affect the pH of a solution? Cl- will not affect the pH because it will not accept a proton to form HCl. Critical thinking question 6. Complete the following sentence. The negative ions formed from a strong acid will not affect the pH, but the negative ion formed from a weak acid will raise the pH and act like a base. Critical thinking question 7. Similar reasoning applies to the positive ions formed from strong and weak bases. Using question 6 as a pattern, complete the following sentence. The positive ions formed from a strong base will not affect the pH, but the positive ion formed from a weak base will lower the pH and act like an acid. Critical thinking question 8. Determine whether each of the following will act like an acid or a base. If the ion will not affect the pH, place an X in the blank. Na+ will not affect the pH. NO3- will not affect the pH. NH4+ will act as an acid. K+ will not affect the pH. NO2- will act as a base. C2H3O2- will act as a base.